So in this session specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about what rewards, how they fit into games, and in general, I'll try to be more informative about this kind of space and how you can utilize it in your games. In the next 45 minutes or so, hopefully we're going to have time for questions afterwards, we're going to talk about three main things. The why. Why should I even care? What happened in the last couple of years in the reward space? They've been here forever, but right now we're trying to understand what creates a more significant growth in rewards everywhere, and specifically in games. The second thing is, how would that rewarded engagement fit into games? And what exactly do I want and need to do in order to understand the users better, and what do I need to, and how do I need to incentivize them? And the last one, we're going to talk a little bit about Offerwall. We're not going to talk today about roadmaps. It's going to be less of a salesy kind of presentation, so I hope it's going to be okay for you. But we're still going to have specific slides talking about the Unity Offerwall and what it has to offer. A little bit about me before we jump in. So my name is Eyal. I'm with Unity for the last 6.5 years. I've been dealing rewards in the last 3 years or so, leading everything around Offerwall, rewarding engagement within Unity, leading growth, strategy, customer support, and business operations, and basically leading the P&L around everything Offerwall that Unity has to offer. Rewards are fundamental to games. That's probably something that you know. It's quite clear, right? But the reason for that is that rewards motivate, teach, engage, and structure the play behavior in your games. That's something that we need to keep in mind. Every time that apps or other kind of brands coming into their space to engage with users, they use the word gamification, right? Because gamification, by its word, meaning that you're going to reward users for progressing in your games, trying to bring them in and lure them, basically to create the hooks for them to continue and play in your games. But before we go very deep into exactly how to use rewards, maybe we need to understand what's happening today in the market. And when you think about the reward space, as I mentioned, games are just one part of it, very strong part of it. But if you think 20 years back, or even before the mobile ecosystem has started, still people use coupons, right? They went to Walmart, they wanted to get something. They didn't want to spend just money, they wanted to get something back in return. And when we look at the last 6 years, sorry, this is 4.5 years, basically a little bit post-COVID, we see quite a surge in the amount of apps coming into the market that actually give rewards to users. These rewards usually are tangible, and in a way that users can actually do something with it. So in return, they can either get cash or get something which has real value in the world. And you see that it almost, the rise that we see here is super significant in the last 4 and 5 years, and we want to explain why. And the main drivers for it, I want to split them into two. The first one on the left-hand side is macroeconomics, macro trends that happen in the world. So during COVID, the mobile ecosystem basically has boomed. Games, apps, everything mobile, digital, grew quite significantly. And right after post-COVID, something happened. There was so many mobile assets out there and web assets out there, but the user behavior wanted something differently. And we saw that because of recession-like actions, recession-like trends, users wanted to get a little bit more for their time, for their investments, for everything that they're doing. And the last one, you remember crypto, play and earn, everything around Web3 games. This ecosystem of the cryptocurrency and also the blockchain basically created some kind of a buzz towards play and earn. People wanted to play games to get cryptocurrency. Now, it's not at the same trend as it used to be, but everything on the state of mind of users has changed. They want to get more for their time. And when we look at specifically at our industry, the market factors that we have today, we saw that along the same year, something happened. Privacy has become much more of an issue. It has become more challenging to do UA. It has become more important to squeeze the lemon of users getting into your games. How can you basically create deeper engagements, longer retention, and eventually get higher LTV for the same users? So when we take these two, we understand that advertisers basically seek two things. They seek, one, diversification. The same video networks were good, but they wanted more. And the second one is that basically quality became much more important than quantity. We saw it in games, we saw it in apps, we also saw it in the stock market. Suddenly, investors wanted to see profit, not only top-line revenue. And eventually, quality is a key here. And at the end of the day, users are still in the center of everything. And when we think about these three constituents working together and what is the value alignment when we talk about rewards, we want to get a deeper dive into that. We wanted to talk specifically about advertisers. We said advertisers wanted to have some kind of diversification in a way that are going to get higher quality, maybe for the same or even lower quantity. So the multiplier would still stay high on the profits. The second thing that they say, and that's quite clear, 37% find difficulty in measurement due to privacy. That's obvious, right? It was very hard to acquire users, good users along the way. The machine learning models wasn't as good as they are today with what we know about vector, for example. And more advertisers basically wanted to find higher quality channels to acquire users. There, they find basically the rewarded channels. Why is it good? Because when you do rewarded channels, the hooks that you put in the game get boosted by more rewards, and sometimes these rewards actually drive more retention and more engagement. And as you can see on the right-hand side, 95% of game developers who deployed reward-based UA were confident it has given them a competitive edge. This is something that we need to keep in mind as advertisers. But let's move to the publishing side. When we think monetization, we know that intrinsic rewards within games, that's a part of the gameplay, right? That's something that if I'm going to give the user rewards, he's probably going to engage more in my game, retain more. I would be able to enjoy much longer relationship with him. Sounds like being in a marriage, I think. But in any case, we do know that intrinsic rewards, it's only a part of it. And sometimes we want to bring in more rewards into the game without really spending money out of our pockets as developers. And we're going to learn how we can do it in a couple of slides. The last, but not least, are the users. Users want more. Here in this room, who doesn't like getting rewards? Everyone likes it. Everyone likes to get something for their time, their efforts, their money. They want to get more, even in a relationship. You want to get more. You want to be valuable. You want to be someone that people love or admire. And that's a part of the things that we want to give to our users. Even stronger than that, this is in their own words. If you play games and you're not going to get paid for it, what are you even doing? So of course, it's not like the common practice of users, but it's quite interesting to see that. And I think the most important part of this section is basically understanding that with everything going on, macroeconomics, the industry trends that we see, the user is in the middle, is the one driving all of that. And I want maybe to close the circle with the different kind of sessions that we had yesterday. Matt yesterday on stage, on the keynote speaking, basically talked a lot about how can we provide higher value proposition to the users. They are the one that we want to service. Of course, we want to make money. Of course, we want to be good at what we do. We want games to be amazing. But eventually, to make it happen, we need to bring the users to the center. We need to understand what he wants and how we can provide it to him. And I think what's more important is that because everything that happened, like the trends and the factors that we see from the market, users has become savvy investors. That's how we like to call them. The amount of IAP depositors probably remains somewhat the same, but they become much more aware of what they're doing with their time and money. And this is what we expect to happen in the next 10 years. So basically, in the next 10 years, we believe that the reward space is going to double itself. Why is that? Because users are going to keep on pushing the same behavior that they see today. We believe that the market is going to explode. Now, it doesn't mean that tomorrow you're going to need to go and develop an app which is going to be a rewards app. But it means that you need to understand that if the user is in the center, his behavior is not going to change in the next couple of years. So we need to think at the same state of mind of the user in the center, and now we need to understand how we can provide him what he wants. And here we come into how does rewarded engagement fit into your game? We at Unity basically, we like to look at it like a spectrum. And I want to try and explain how we came to that kind of spectrum. I think a couple of years ago, when we thought about monetization within games, basically we thought it's a binary thing, right? Either IAP or ads. It's basically, do you have a good experience or bad experience? Do you love the game? You don't love the game. We do understand that it's much more complex than that. And because it's more complex than that, we believe that there is more of a continuous line between these two. And the continuous line starts on the left-hand side with banners, which are very common to everyone, through interstitial, rewarded video, Offerwall, et cetera, and at the end of it, we have IAP and subscription. And we also see in the market today that there is a trend of hybridization, meaning more and more ad-based games are trying to do IAP, what we call hybrid casual, et cetera. And we see that more and more IAP-focused kind of games are moving into ads in a way that it's going to be smart. It's not supposed to be very blunt to the user. And this is where Offerwall and in general, the spectrum come into place. When we look at the spectrum, we're trying to analyze it in three main dimensions. One of them is scale. The other one is monetary value. And the last one is the user intent or the user experience. We can take, for example, banners. For banners, the scale is super significant, right? Everyone is going to see it. We don't really have segmentation. But eventually, the monetary value of it is going to be super low. The eCPMs are low, and the KPI is different. We just want to create the brand awareness of it. If you would ask a user, do you like banners? What they would say? No. Yes? Someone? Someone thinks yes? OK. So we're good. Yeah, they don't like banners. It's something that basically fuels the industry. It's something that pushes the industry to bring more money from brands in and try to develop games, apps, etc. So it's important, but for users, it's not really what they ask for. When we go to the right-hand side along like these three scales, basically we understand that the scale drops significantly. IAP and subscription are usually small percentages within your user base, but the monetary value is super high. And usually, you would need the user intent to make it happen. When we talk about user experience, the user experience somewhere here in the middle, which is not very blunt, is going to be OK. Okay? And this is why the spectrum is so important for us to understand this continuous line. Trying to simplify it even more, on the left-hand side, we would call it the core ad interactions. Would you agree on that? Nodding or raising hands, that's OK. In the middle one, Offerwall and Live Ops, we're going to talk about rewarding engagements. And on the right-hand side, we're going to talk about direct purchase. Yesterday, also on the keynote speaking and also on the sessions, we understand that Unity today has to offer probably everything in that spectrum. You heard growth session talking about the ad monetization, whether it's going to be interstitial, rewarded video, playables, everything on that end. Live Ops, it's something that Unity put a lot of focus, basically, to push for Live Ops capabilities that you can do from remote configuration, different kind of campaigns, segmentation, and of course, the IAP and subscription we're going to talk in a nutshell in a second. That's a summary. On the left-hand side, we have the core ad interactions. We know that the scale is big. We know that it's low eCPMs. Usually, we would need the support of a third-party vendor, right? For rewarding engagements, it's medium volumes, higher eCPMs, and the idea here is to try, I don't like the word, but it's actually what it is, squeezing the lemon, trying to push for more and more retention and more engagement of your users. And on the right-hand side, we do want to focus on high spenders. I like the phrase native shoppers, even in games. It's people that come into the game, they like it, and they are willing to put some money out of their pockets. For core ad interactions, we're not going to talk about it in this session. You had it yesterday. I hope most of you have been in the sessions. We're going to talk mainly about rewarding engagements, but I do want to touch in 1.5 slides on direct purchase. What happened in the market? And also yesterday, we've been talking about that for a second. Basically, the platforms, along the last couple of years, there was a trend of breaking the walls, meaning that you, when you play in a device of Apple or Google, now you have more options to buy basically IAPs. That's happening through web shops. It's because of rule regulations, different kind of laws coming in. And that's something which is super important, especially for developers, publishers, advertisers, wherever they are. And why is that? Because they reduce the costs. And in many cases, reducing the costs creates two things: opportunity for the users and higher profit for the developers. Another thing which is super important that you need to keep in your mind is everything around building loyalty. If today there was some kind of separation between the different kind of platforms for users, whether they're playing consoles, Android, or iOS devices, or even PC, this is the place that they are. But now that you are able to have one asset that bring them in and basically create more engagement and relationship with them, helps you basically build their loyalty, or your loyalty program. And that's something that you need to keep in your mind. Probably that would be the evolution of everything around web shops, if you ask me. And as you heard yesterday, Unity is entering that space as well, so that the agreement we have with Stripe and other vendors basically to provide a cross-platform e-commerce solution for developers, that is something that we really put focus on for this year, and hopefully it's going to be beneficial for everyone working with us. And yet, only, in average, less than 5% are actually spenders in your game. Anyone here has more than 10% IAP spenders in their games by raising hands? That's quite uncommon. And, sorry? Okay. That's quite uncommon. And if you look at the Lego man here, so there are around 450, 500, only 20 of them actually would make a purchase. So that's quite interesting, because what about the rest? We have around 95% of the users, especially in IAP-focused kind of games, that are not being monetized. They're not being monetized because right now we feel that the only choice that we have is ads. That is going to be blunt, it's going to ruin the user experience, and it's going to be something that it's not going to be opt-in for the users. And this is where rewarding engagements come into play. When we think about rewarding engagements, we have two options. One of them is Offerwall. Does anyone here, by raising hands, know what Offerwall is all about? 50%, that's good. Anyone implemented Offerwall? 5%? No, I'm just joking. So Offerwall is basically, and we're going to talk about that in a second, but basically Offerwall is an in-app marketplace of offers that create a value exchange between users that spend time, sometimes money, but mostly time, publishers who contribute the real estate and basically the rewards within their game, and we have the advertiser that actually pays for it. And the idea behind it is that we want to provide or to give users the options not to pay money out of their pockets and actually spend time and invest their time to get the same amount of rewards they would have get if they would put $20 out of their pockets. But someone else is paying for it. They just need to invest their time and efforts. Alongside to that, something that you probably know much better than I am, it's the live operations tools. So the campaigns that we have, segmentation. We basically create campaigns and rewards to users along the different kind of cycle of their users, which is super interesting because these two actually work together. But when we try to break it down and to analyze why they work so good together and why we put them at the same bucket, we're trying to look at four main pillars. One is the gameplay. For each and every one of them, we would want the rewards or the campaigns to come in a place that is going to be seamless to the gameplay. It's going to be an extension to the game economy, meaning that Offerwall, as we see it, it's an extension to your game economy. It basically means that if you want to provide the user with rewards to continue and progress in the game, you can use Offerwall. You can also use live ops, but in a way, they complement each other. The second one is user engagement. So when we have live operations campaign, it's usually us, the developers, who wants to push the user to progress in a game, right? We want to create a campaign for him because right now he's in level 20, and we want him to get to level 30 and to continue and progress in the game. With Offerwall, we use the user intent to progress in the game in order to actually make it happen. So eventually, we want to create in these two engagements good users, high quality, that would retain, engage, and eventually create a higher LTV for us. And here comes the performance side. So for both of them, of course, revenue is an issue. But the idea behind it is that, first of all, we want to drive retention and engagement. In comparison to, let's call it the core ad interactions, where the main goal is let's get more revenue in scale. So here we want to get more retention, more engagement, as much as we can to push the LTV to a longer term. Make sense? Cool. The last one is the monetary balance, which I touched a little bit about it. It's basically saying when you do a live ops campaign, usually you would pay for it. When you have an Offerwall campaign, you're going to get paid for it. And that's something, this is why I really like the fact that when we think about live ops and Offerwall, these two must work together. If you're a developer that doesn't do a lot of live ops campaign, that's okay. But when you start working with Offerwall, think how to boost it through live ops campaign and vice versa. I think this slide again, and maybe it would help us wrap this section, it's about diversification. I don't think there is one size that fits all. Eventually, when we think about the spectrum, you can imagine yourself above that, percentages of usage, 5% of banners, 20% interstitial, et cetera, until the moment that you say, okay, I have my strategy, I have my growth strategy on how I can fulfill the potential of my user base. And we all the time need to remember, you can be IAP focused or IAP only kind of game, but you're missing something behind. Still with me? By the way, we didn't do any tests on animals along these slides. There is another animal later on. I do want to talk a little bit about Offerwall specifically. And this is the salesy slide. So Tapjoy for Immunity today is definitely the Offerwall of choice for game developers. Without getting into numbers, for the ones using Offerwall, we are the main provider for it, and we're super happy for it, so thank you for the one implementing it. But I do want to talk a little bit deeper into what Offerwall is all about. I think there are three main things that we need to think about Offerwall. One, it's opt-in for the users. It's not intrusive, and it's supposed to be located in places that users has the decision to say, do I want to invest my time or money? In many cases, we would be in a place that we would capture users that we know or believe that they wouldn't want to spend their money. We don't want to harm your IAP revenue. We want to complement it. Okay, so that's one. The second one, Offerwall, in comparison to other ad formats, as we used to think about Offerwall as an ad format, the eCPMs are super high. I can tell you that in the last month, the average eCPM was around $280, something like that. That's super high. And the last one is that once we're having an Offerwall, it's basically creating a value exchange between all the constituents that we mentioned before. Everyone supposed to get something which he really wants. Advertiser would get high-quality users because we are boosting the hooks of their games, of their UA efforts. Publishers are getting money that they don't need to spend out of their pockets, and users are getting rewards. This is what they like. And when we think about this marketplace, like every network, we basically look at two sides of the table. And of course, still in that thing, now we take users are in the center, but we want to take the perspective of like acquisition for you as advertisers, and also the monetization part for you as publishers. Let's start with acquisition. I think it speaks for itself, but I'm going to try to walk you through it. Today, from the data that we have, and this looks at Android only, but I'm going to talk in a second about iOS as well, we already see that 20% of advertisers that have been interacting with rewards are buying on Offerwall. And that's a part of their marketing mix. And you can also see that it's not only specific advertisers. You see that we have different kind of advertisers and genres basically working with Offerwall, and that's a part of their marketing spend. This is something which is super interesting because in Offerwall, at least for our Offerwall that we have to offer, you can find something for each and every user. And that's because we have different kind of options for advertisers to acquire users. We have what we call as the long-term engagements, the multi-reward campaigns. It's basically creating a flow that usually would be very close to hooks in your games that you can say, okay, first of all, finish tutorial. Here, this is a very small reward. Later on, reach to level 20. Later, I want you to reach to level 100, and maybe the highest value would be for you to make a purchase. And when we create that kind of flow, basically means that the users need to go to different kind of milestones to get the total reward that he wants to get. In many cases, he will get it until the end of it. In some cases, he wouldn't, and we would need to optimize it. We would need to understand maybe the bid's supposed to be different. The good part about multi-reward is that you are bidding for each and every event that you want the users to come to reach, basically. Why is it good? Because you're paying for what you're getting. If you know the exact LTV that you're having in your game, it's supposed to be riskless UA efforts. Make sense? Good. The second one is basically daily rewards. Daily rewards, it's a campaign that we launched a year ago or a year and a half ago, basically with the desire to reward users in a more frequent way. Meaning that if you have a level-based game, that you need to progress level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or something which the gameplay is, has the same kind of repetitive events, you can say every event that the user is reaching, I'm going to give him a portion of the rewards. And in that way, basically, we create a more higher amount of sessions per period of time for a specific game. And this was usually better for games like casual game simulation and stuff like that. I can tell you that we saw along the last year and a half, that even games which are very heavy, but they have these repetitive events, they can find different segments to bring into your game. So they have also multi-reward for the very heavy gamers wants to play in the game and deepen their relationship, and the ones that are coming to test it out until they have a hook that brings them, that keeps them staying in the game. I think the last one is basically the immediate completions. We talk about shopping offers, e-commerce, surveys, different kind of, usually it's going to be web-based offers for users who really want immediate completions. eCPMs would be a bit lower, but it usually would be for users that have like a threshold they want to pass, and all they need is like 10 coins more to play in the game. Make sense so far? Questions on that? Cool. I think that when we're talking about UA, I have basically one key message here. Today, because of the surge in the number of apps out there, the rewards apps, and each and every one of them wants to be a UA channel that you can buy users from, you need to remember that whenever you acquire users on a rewarded channel, you need to try to balance between the scale and the sustainable scale that the channel has to offer, okay? The quality and the long-term return. And it's also a question, what is your KPIs on your UA efforts? There are some of you that might say, I just want to create a boost campaign to bring as many users as possible, and then we'll see. That's great. We have channels that are relevant for that. Others would say, okay, I want to acquire high-quality users that would stick with me, that I would be able basically to monetize and to create relationship with them for the long term. Let's move to the other side, monetization. When we think about monetization, when we talk about Offerwall, that used to be the slide, okay? We looked at it like in taxonomy, genres, categories, stuff like that. You can take a picture of that and then delete it and look at the other slide. I'm just kidding. So that was like the previous thought, right? Because we look at the industry as taxonomy-based, category-based. And we do understand that hyper-casual, usually it's not a good fit. Why? Because it's runners, it's like something which is, the metadata is not super heavy, not necessarily user would want it. And probably from casual and beyond, there's going to be like a good fit for Offerwall. But when we go deeper to that, especially because of hybridization, like hyper-casual moving to hybrid casual and vice versa, we started thinking about that through the economy. You want to take a picture? Oh, okay. Cool. So we do want to look at it from the economy perspective. I think the main message is, if you have a deposit rate, meaning amount of users who actually make a deposit, which is higher than 3%, your economy is a good fit for Offerwall. Okay, this is the main message. Why? Because it means that users have something to spend rewards for. It's something that is tangible, if you remember from the beginning of the presentation. It's tangible, they can use it, and it's worth something. Probably something that they have in their pocket that they don't want to spend. So soft currency probably is not a good fit for Offerwall. If you would come to me afterwards and say, listen, I have an hyper-casual game runner, I don't have depositor rate, but I really want to squeeze the lemon with Offerwall, I would say, it's just a waste of time. Let's think about how to build an economy which is going to be a bit more robust, so Offerwall can have a vehicle to ride on, because then the extension to your economy makes sense. So we do talk about, let's say, from the medium of medium currency until hard currency. This is the place that we believe that Offerwall is going to be a good fit for you, because the rewards are tangible. Then some of the users actually make deposits, and the others, we want to monetize them more heavily. I like this presentation, this slide very much. I like the next one more. So basically, when we think about monetization and what you need to think ahead when you are thinking of implementing in your monetization strategy, I think the first part is, what are my KPIs? Do I want to prioritize retention and engagement with this kind of tool? Because as we mentioned before, reward engagements drive retention and engagement. As a byproduct, they would generate much higher revenues. If you use Offerwall, it would generate higher revenues from the get-go. So you need to think, what is my KPI? And how can I bring back users to the game? And according to that, you can think, how do I need to acquire them? When do I need to monetize them? Do I need to build segmentation? Who do I want to approach? The second one, which we talked quite a lot already, is like, how can I fulfill the potential of my user base? Not only 5% or 20% that like to see interstitial and do not walk away. And the last one is, does that actually give me a value proposition to my growth strategy? Does that actually give an added value to the users? Okay? And then, probably what you're going to ask, which is the elephant in the room. This is not a real elephant, don't worry. So the elephant in the room is, when I'm implementing Offerwall, would that cannibalize my IAP revenue, right? Who thought about that? Raising hands. Nice. So we have an answer. It means that that's a good question. So along the years, probably in the past 5, 6, 7 years, I think this is the biggest question coming from game developers. When I'm implementing Offerwall, what's going to happen to my IAP depositor? Would that be less? Am I going to get less revenue? And we wanted to test it out. And it's not an easy task, right? Because I think one thing, and that's something I'm giving you a hint, it's very hard to analyze causation in that manner. it's easy to show correlation. It's very hard to show causation. Like if I'm using Offerwall, am I actually going to purchase something later? Okay? We also did that test, and I can tell you about it, but I don't have a slide for it. But eventually, users that go to the Offerwall are high intent. And we know that if we can break the psychological barrier for them to make an acquisition, to make a purchase, they would do that. And we do see that there is a correlation between users getting into the Offerwall and actually make a purchase. This is a game by Big Fish, Evermerge. You heard about it? Yeah? Okay. And just to give you some background, so 90% of the revenue is IAP, 10% was ads before Offerwall. And we implemented Offerwall. And like you, they said, I don't want to touch my payers. I don't want to show them Offerwall. I'm afraid it's going to be cannibalizing it. No way. So we started rolling out with only 50% of the non-payers. And you can see, which is quite obvious, that the revenue went up. And then the revenue went up when we went to 100%. And after several months that we worked with them and we talked with them, we made an analysis and stuff like that, basically we said, okay, it's about time, right? Let's try it on your payers. And we asked them, listen, don't show it to all payers. If you have whales, don't show it to them if you're afraid. But let's show it to all payers and see what's going on. And we did an A/B test. And through the A/B test, basically we saw that the revenue came in, was significant, and the cannibalization was insignificant to zero. And more than that, when we rolled it out to everyone, this is what you see. So the revenue from the Offerwall, of course, went up because more users saw the Offerwall. I'm going to talk about the spikes in a second. But the result is that 10% went up on IAP ARPDAU. So it's true. Not necessarily there is causation. There might be IAP purchasers went into the Offerwall and then went and made another purchase. They didn't see cannibalization even in a small segment that they tested on users that they said, okay, because of Offerwall, they stopped paying. It's just another way for them to basically engage with the game. And I think another interesting fact is that 13% of the total ARPDAU from the total amount of users went up, 13%. That's quite significant. About the three spikes that you see here. So what we have with the Offerwall, that's another feature, salesy. So we have what we call currency sales, usually in very special weekends. For example, Thanksgiving, the upcoming Thanksgiving, we have what we call a currency sale. So the developer basically is saying, I'm willing to give more rewards for the same amount of money I'm going to get because I want more users to be engaged with the Offerwall. Okay? And usually, that's what we see. We see very big spikes in these kind of weekends or holidays, which is very nice for everyone. Now, I do want to look. This was one example talking about the cannibalization itself, but I do want to take a more of a holistic look at my game's integration that drove all retention and engagement and revenue. Specifically with my games, a couple of things happen, and this is like the best practice slide, but beside that, we don't have anything else. It's basically saying, when you are implementing something like Offerwall, which is true also for live ops, by the way, it's true also for core ad placements, you need to think where you're going to put it, okay? So usually with core ad placements, you put it in place that wouldn't ruin too much retention, right? When you think about IAP, usually it's in the same place. Sometimes you have live ops campaign, but it's in the same place. It's going to be in your IAP store. When you think about rewarding engagements, you want to understand the user journey, the life cycle. When would he want, basically, to create some kind of a fulfillment of his engagement? It can be in the IAP store or in the home page after he finishes the level and he wants to continue and progress in the game. And these are the main places that we recommend to put it. By the way, when we define the right placement and the right place to put it, it's usually being done with our consultants, basically with the account managers and the people that really knows the Offerwall and where to put the Offerwall within the game. So for my games, they put it in the in-app store they have in the game and also in the homepage, which was very visible to users. And what they did is open it to everyone. So basically, they said, I'm not afraid of cannibalization. I want to show it to everyone. Of course, at the beginning, we did some testing, segmentation, but eventually it was like that. Second one is everything around performance. So we're going to see in a second the slide. More users, like higher ARPU for the same amount of session or session group was very significant in what they saw, and the session depth was much higher, meaning that retention, engagement, and revenue definitely nailed the KPI. And the last one is they use different kind of features that we have. I don't know if you see on the back, this is like a promotion for a currency sale. You can see the X2, the 2X. So basically they say to users, hey, come into the Offerwall because you're going to get more rewards for the same amount of time that you're going to spend. But yeah, they use the geo multipliers, which I'm going to talk in a second, the currency sales segmentation and everything on that end. You remember I was talking about genres. So once the currency, the economy that you have in your game is strong enough, Offerwall can be a good fit no matter which kind of genre you have. We stopped looking at taxonomy as like the gateway for Offerwall. We're looking at the economy, as I mentioned before. And what you see on the right-hand side, it might be a little bit tricky. We bucketed the users according to sessions. And basically what you see as the columns is the ARPU. ARPU on the red-orange bar is the ones that are utilizing Offerwall. And the blue one is on the A/B test, the one that didn't see any Offerwall over there. So you can see that the ARPU in general went up. And it's a combination between the retention within the game and engagement, and of course the revenue coming in from the Offerwall. Okay? Cool. Geo multiplier. I said I'm going to mention that in a second. The spend that we're going to see from advertisers in tier 2 and tier 3 geos, it's not the same as the spend that we're going to see in the US, right? And if we think about the value exchange, it means that the users wouldn't see the same amount of rewards they're going to get as they would see if they would have been in the US, for example. And this is why we said, okay, when we think about retention, engagement, revenue, we want to make sure that we fulfill the potential as much as possible. So we might want to boost a little bit the rewards that users are going to get in tier 2, tier 3 countries, just for the sake of them to really engage with the Offerwall in scale. And that's what's happening. So with geo multipliers, you basically choose the countries that you are willing to give some kind of a multiplier on the usual exchange rate that you're having across the other geos. So if in the US you have 100 gems for $1, it might be that in tier 3 countries it's going to be 150. Okay? So the profit margin might be smaller for specific users, but when we think about it in scale, it's much higher. And also retention, engagement, longer-term revenue. Again, this amazing slide, remember that. That's important. But I think I'm going to add with these 3 takeaways, and then we can open it to questions. One, which I think it's probably the most important one. Along the years and the trend that we see, users want and expect more. Even you guys, you want more. You came to this conference because you wanted to get something out of it. Whether it's going to be networking, maybe you're going to get prizes, maybe whatever. But you came here maybe just for fun. That's good as well. But eventually, we want to get something from the time that we invest. That's a part of who we are. Also, users are like that. And we need to keep that in mind. We need to keep that in mind when we build the growth strategy that we're having. And when we do that, we need also to challenge our assumptions. Is it cannibalizing? Good, it's a good question, but you can test it out. You can check it out, you can see how it works. Whether it's going to be live ops campaigns, whether it's going to be Offerwall, whatever. Challenge your growth strategy. It's not binary. It's much more linear than that. It's much more continuous than that. The spectrum is something that you need to keep in mind. And the last one, which is always true. Whenever you're going to launch something, whether it's a campaign of your own, UA campaigns, monetization, different kind of channels that you're going to work with, you need to do 2 things as a prerequisites to that. One, define what is the KPI. What am I looking for? Is it scale, retention, quality of revenue, engagements? Because sometimes we just run and do different kind of stuff because the industry is running. But we really need to ask ourselves, what am I doing? Because eventually we want to make profit, and we want to make sure that it's going to be sustainable. We want to make sure that we are going to grow in the right path. And I think that defining the KPIs and then monitoring, analyzing it, understanding what's working, double down on that, that's something that we need all the time to keep in mind. Coming back to the first two, users in the center, and challenge your belief, or try to debunk different myths that not necessarily are true, like the cannibalization of Offerwall to IAP. Make sense? Cool. Basically, we're done. We have some time for questions.